Okay, thank you all for coming to our 2026 Milestones Festival Juror Talks, where we let the jurors who are really responsible for choosing what artwork has appeared in this exhibition, we let them give their impressions, talk a little bit about their selection process, and talk about some of the artworks that particularly caught their eye during the course of their work. Before we get into that, though, we do have one announcement for the artists that are present who will be picking up your artwork at the end of the exhibition. First of all, we ask that you do not try to take any of your artwork away until 4 o'clock when we actually close the exhibition. And secondly, we ask that you do not take the artwork off the panels yourselves, but rather go through our process so we can check you out. And we have volunteers that will take your artwork and bring it to you and check you out up at the tables up front. So please adhere to that policy. It makes it a lot less chaotic for us and helps us keep track of everything. So we have a full slate of jurors addressing you today. So you've got a lot of information coming your way. Our first juror is Janet Montecalvo, who was one of our painting jurors. And I'll read you the bio we have for her, which is actually also in your programs. A commercial and fine art artist. Janet's worked in a variety of disciplines, including children's book publishing, print, TV, and film production, graphic design, and fine art painting. She was the first licensed journeywoman sign painter in Boston and established a commercial design business working with retailers, design firms, ad agencies, real estate developers, and broadcast producers. Her illustrations for the children's book Sophie and the City were featured in a solo exhibit at Danforth Art. Janet won an Emmy for graphic design contributions to the television movie I'll Be Home for Christmas. I think one of the few Emmy Award winners we've had here. She won the Alden Bryan Memorial Award for her oil landscape painting at the 2024 Academic Artists Association 74th National Exhibition. Janet's paintings are often described as contemporary archaeology. Wow, I hope you'll explain what that means. But she explores the spaces and physical objects associated with day-to-day life from the mid-20th century to the present. Her art reveals a penchant for detailed work and appreciation of design and craftsmanship. So, Janet Montecalvo.
I try to look at the color or the light and shade of a painting, if they're balancing. Like sometimes you just need a tiny little spot of light. If it's in a dark painting, it draws you right in. But I tend to like it to kind of bounce around the canvas. So that's another thing I look for. And subject matter, well, I tend to go for I wouldn't say the gritty, but I tend to go for kind of industrial scenes or pieces of work, like an angle line or underneath the bridge at Boston on the Charles River. There's a rust. Oops, I did it again. And I like to look at the patterns of rust. So I tend to go for like a vintage or nostalgic kind of subject matter myself. And also because I tended to do sign painting and it had to be bright and clear and as precise as you could make it. Because if you screwed up on a logo, you would have to go back and do it again. So that's where I really got into tight draftsmanship kind of work. And then the children's book work kind of brought out the color more so than anything, because you want to grab the kids and have them see the picture, but also read the words. And if the pictures aren't doing it, then they're not going to read the book. So that's my background and the things I chose. So I think I'll just have Ken do the selections and tell you why I picked them. I thought this Apple Branch is by Dana Wells. I don't know, when I saw it, I thought, this is a perfect painting. I liked how there were sharp edges, but lots of smooth or hidden, smudged, I would say, edges or soft edges. And I don't do soft edges very often, but I'm trying to pay attention more because my work it can be very cartoonish almost because of the hard edge. But when I do a still life, I like to try to soften because you're close up and focusing on the still life. So it can't all stand out at the same degree. So I like this one because it's such a simple subject matter. And I just thought the way it was designed with the negative space, but the negative space also had a lot of color in it if you paid attention. So I think it's just, I like to paint things that you might miss and not think are beautiful. And one of these days I'll paint a shiny trash can, the old-fashioned kind, and make sure the light is great and do something like that. And the next one I chose for my judge's choice, and I basically grew up in Boston. It was really Quincy, but we were always going into Boston. And the Public Garden was one of our favorite places to go. And I don't usually see nighttime paintings of this subject. So when I saw this and saw how the light kind of went around in a circle on the canvas, I thought that this was another good one for my taste. And I like to try and do more of this garden myself, but I tend to go for the swans. And but this is a great, I'd like to walk through there at night. And my next one would be Amanda Oakleaf, July Clothesline. And the light and dark, I just thought was beautiful. And you do see that vintage chair over there on the right. And that kind of grabbed me too, because I remember having those. And we kept painting them different colors every year. But I just like the way she handled the paint too. Most of it looks like palette knife to me. And I thought, well, she's pretty good with a knife. But there's a little bit of brushwork. But just overall, I like the light and the dark that travels through the whole painting or the diptych. And the next one is Julian with Apple. When I saw this online, I thought this is number one. And the handling of the paint is amazing, especially on the hair and the eyes. The whole face is great. Plus it's fun. I also think if a painting has fun, you can't stop looking at it. And that's why I picked that one. And then number 5, this one, this sick day is very sick, as the kids would say, but it just makes me smile. It makes me go back to sick days that I've had. I think everybody could remember their favorite blankie when they're sick. My husband's still looking for his. And what you ate. And the biggest thing I would say about this is like the finish. There was a lot of shiny spots or dull spots. And they might want to think about that. You can varnish paintings, even if they're part acrylic and part oil. So, and just work a little bit on the ovals. But I think the concept is great, and I think this person should keep going. And the last but not least is little things can make a big impact. And I think the handling of the medium was great, and the subject with the title is perfect. And I think everybody has experienced a pebble in their shoe. So I wanted to mention this one. I'm not sure about the background color, but it made me smile when I saw it online, and in person, as soon as I saw it, it just makes you happy. And that's what I try to do. So those are my choices and my reasons. And that's all.
Before we go on, are there any questions for Janet?
What color would you put in the background? Would you put anything in there?
You know, I think first I would maybe just crop a little bit off the bottom and a tiny bit off the top and see if that's enough to tone down the overall size of the background. I would take sheets of paper and maybe do some test pieces and put it right up next to the sneaker. Or it could stay the same, because that's just my opinion. You have to take yours in. But I would try to crop a little off the bottom first before I add any paint to it.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next juror to talk is Ron Rosenstock, who's been a longtime friend of the Worcester County Camera Club, has spoken before our club on a number of occasions. Ron's photographs are in the collections of the Fogg Art Museum, Worcester Art Museum, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the International Center of Photography, the Peabody Essex Museum, and numerous private collections. He's been honored with over 100 exhibits in the United States and Europe in the past 50 years, including the Worcester Art Museum and the National Museum of Iceland. Ron has published 6 books of his photographs. Ron's a frequent lecturer to social, community, and professional groups, as well as an international photo tour leader in Ireland, Scotland, Iceland, Greenland, Morocco, Italy, Greece, Cuba, New Zealand, and Vinyl Haven, Maine. So, Ron. There he is. Pass the baton to you here.
Okay. You all hear me okay? Ken, thank you very much. And I want to thank the whole committee also. It was a real privilege to be invited to judge your work. You know, well, listen, you know what Ken said, I'll tell you, it's interesting. As my grandmother used to say, it pays to get older. You know, so I was one of those fortunate people who learned from people like Ansel Adams, influenced by Edward Weston. He died in '54, so I was in 4th grade then. I didn't know him, but I did see a show of his at the Museum of Modern Art when I was in high school, like in '59, and it blew me away. And ever since then, I have been like addicted to the art of photography. And you know, I was influenced a lot by Minor White when he first came to MIT in '67. I worked with him privately at his home, took a number of workshops and assisted him in some workshops. And then Paul Caponegro, who recently passed away last November, a good friend of mine, and for years and years and years. So that's why I say it pays to get older, you know, because I just had some great experiences and just met some wonderful people. One thing I've learned, well, it's a quote by Meister Eckhart, who was a 13th century German theologian. And he had said, art is not just for special people, but everyone is a special kind of an artist. You know, like as Janet said, I could have chosen 10 or more, really great photographs that stood out. But with 3 judges and first, second, and third place and some honorable mentions, we had to kind of pare it down and compromise, but we all have our own individual opinions because of our own, background and experiences. Oops, I'm pulling a Janet here, hitting things. So, I just put my hands behind my back here. So I just wanted to kind of comment that everyone's work was really pretty wonderful. What can I say? There are many things that go into making a really meaningful photograph. Like I talk about when I give lectures to different organizations, I talk about 3 ingredients required for making really meaningful art. Attention, intention, and awareness. Like attention to detail, for instance. Like the photograph is much more than subject matter. The camera only reacts to the light reflecting off the subject matter. Just as film did, now the sensor in our camera or iPhone pretty much works the same way. It's recording the light that's reflecting off the subject matter. So we are really photographing light. That's what photography is really all about. We're photographing the light reflecting off subject matter. And, the intention, why are we doing this? What is this need to create? This is something that I find really fascinating, especially when I watch these like Nova shows about discovering, art and cave walls that's like 30,000 years old and older. It's almost like we're born with this kind of creative gene within us. The need to create is just within absolutely everybody. I could actually ramble on for a long time on that theme, but I chose 3 different photographs that I'm going to talk about a little bit. But before we do that, I'm going to quote from a book I just read. So I didn't really prepare much, but I wrote this down because it really applies to everybody. I just thought it was quite a wonderful quote. This came from a book by, his name is Roman Hannes. The book is called From Beyond Ayahuasca, which is actually sort of a medicine plant in the Amazon basin. So the guy who wrote the book, Roman Hannes, studied with a shaman from one of the tribes in the Amazon basin. And I just took this paragraph out of the book. Applying, and it's not just photographers, everybody. Applying an artistic lens to our experience helps us see beyond the external layers and plumb the depths of mystery, paradox, and the beauty of being human. Anyone who has ever fallen in love with life becomes a poet of evolution, capable of attaining the inconceivable, for it's the poetic inspiration that connects us to the essence of being alive. In what ways have art, poetry, and other forms of expression helped you connect with your true essence? Well, I just love that. So I thought I would just share that with you folks, because it really applies to all of us. We've all been, our lives would be very different, if we weren't creative. And, you could be a creative cook, a creative gardener, a creative housekeeper, a creative mother and father, or painter, artist, poet. It's all about being creative. Okay, so I chose a few photographs to talk about. This is by Rich Lapping, Sudbury River. I didn't see Rich. Is he here? I guess not. Well, I just fell in love with this photo. In fact, as soon as I walked in, it's on the far wall there, I think like 2 over, and it caught my eye straight away. Rich has, I would say, a recognizable kind of vision. I know his work for many, many years, and if there were like 10 different photographers having a show and there were no names on it, I could easily pick, Rich's out. Which I find really fascinating because we're all kind of very special individuals and we see in our own unique kind of way. So he's really penetrating something really deep here. And the technique is so important. Subtle things that you don't even know unless you're really into photography. Kind of a slight vignette in the corners to bring your eye, into the middle of the image. I often tell people that, like God didn't create the world so we could just photograph it. We have to create with the tools at hand. And I often give an example of like a potter who may throw clay down on a wheel. He doesn't say, I'm done, that's my masterpiece. He shapes it. He uses his hands and creates something. But we create with light. We used to do it in the dark room, by keeping our hand between the light and the paper, giving more or less light to certain areas or changing the contrast. We basically do the same thing now with a computer. So technique is really important. And another thing which is really important about photography, good technique is totally invisible. Now, if there were a big blotch in there, or just something that was really distracting, that would really jump out at you. But it's kind of a perfectness about it. Nothing really stands out or jumps out as being imperfect. As I said, good technique is invisible. So when you're looking at it, as if you're there on the shore and you're experiencing this particular image, which Jim had, created with the technique available to us. Black and white photography is an abstraction by its nature because the world is not in black and white. The world is in color and it's three-dimensional. So photography is, definitely an abstraction. All kinds of photography is an abstraction. So, it's created by the photographer. If you were standing right there, it would look very different. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Edward Weston, and he's the photographer his work first influenced me. And he kept a diary called The Day Books of Edward Weston, and there are 2 volumes in it. And I remember reading a passage from his wife, Charis Weston, who said every time we went to the original scene of where Edward made, these wonderful photographs, they'd find little tan sand hills and crumbled up roots or something. But, it was Edward's vision that made them so magnificent. And that's what, Rich Lapping has done here with this particular image. Just clouds and a reservoir and trees, but this has a magical quality to it. I'm sorry he's not here. He would have liked to hear that, I think. So, okay, let's have the next by James Hunt. And I didn't see James here either. These guys are going to hear from me later, let me tell you. So, there's just a lovely balance from this. The stronger roots coming from the bottom kind of pulls your eye in. It's, it's just obviously just a reflection of trees on a fairly still river with a tiny bit of ripple to it. And it's just so, it sounds like a pun, fluid, if I may say. Obviously it's water. And just a lovely balance to it. And again, it brings your eye into it. There's nothing that really distracts from the image. It's very plain and very simple, but yet, very beautiful. And sometimes, like less is more. Often we try to put too much into our images, but just to really focus on a small little area sometimes really conveys the whole story. So I just really think this is a marvelous photograph also. Okay, we will go. This one also, in color. Neil, I forgive you. That's okay. No, but this also really caught my eye. Like the way Neil saw this is very, very unique. And the structure itself with all the triangles and different shapes and the light coming through this lovely path of light. It kind, you kind of enter from the bottom and zooms, right into it. I just think it's just a lovely kind of image. And, sometimes people talk about rules of composition. Ansel Adams had said that you can apply the rules of composition after the fact. This is almost like the rule of thirds, where the road, the bottom part of it kind of ends about 2/3 of the way up. But if it didn't, it might still work. Now, I have another rule I call Rosenstock's rule of halves. And sometimes that works also. It just kind of depends. But the balance of this, is more broken up where your eye goes zooming, right into it with those lovely kind of shapes like all over the place. So it kind of pulls you in. You can't help but not feel like you're really dragged into that particular image. And also, as I said, good technique is invisible. If there was something really wrong with it, that's what you would see. But you don't. You just kind of relate to the image as Neil saw it. So it's a beautiful image. So I just chose those three to talk about, today. But there were, many, many others. I'm just thinking through the top of my head. We don't have them here, but that's okay. Neil also had another photograph of a bookcase that I thought was really beautiful. And James Hunt had another one of a waterfall, that was really nice also. And Rich Lapping had another one of a lovely light. It looked like it was taken in a church, so quiet light on the staircase. And a lot of really beautiful work in this particular show. So, again, Ken, thanks for inviting me here, and really, really enjoyed it. So, any questions, folks?
What's your rule of hands?
Well, I can tell you how that came about. I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. Some years ago, I was leading well, I gotta go back further than that. I had a vision one night, like a dream, but it was so realistic. I saw in my head a photograph of the Taj Mahal. And it was a complete reflection, like in like the water below, and I woke up and it was so vivid. I felt I had to go there, I'll try to make a long story short, but I was leading a trip, photo tour to Nepal, and I asked the guy who I work for, the tour organizer, if he thought it's possible to do an extension to India and we could go to Agra and photograph the Taj Mahal. He said, well, let me check if the other people want to do it and pay the extra money, et cetera, et cetera. So everything worked out. Just miraculously, it all worked out. And we get to the Taj Mahal early in the morning, and they wouldn't let us in because we had tripods. No tripods at the Taj Mahal. And the guide said, well, I know another location, but it's really difficult to get to around the back, and we have to cross this river. And I said, well, we're here, might as well do it. I was so disgusted at that point, I didn't care. I figured it came all the way to India to make this photograph, it's not going to happen. So, I was all wound up in my mind about, oh, God, this is awful, what a disaster. And we finally get across the river, which was an experience because that river is more like a cesspool than anything else. And we had to have a boatman take us across, and the water was like this close to coming in on us. So by the time we got to the other side, and I set up my tripod, this is my 4x5 view camera. And so I get it all set up, and I put the dark cloth over my head, but my mind was all in a stew, you know what I mean, for the whole situation. And then I saw that image in the upside down in the ground glass of my camera. And I made that exposure. In fact, that was the only exposure I made in my trip to India. I made one exposure, which not many people go to India to make one exposure. But that's what I did. And it's been very successful. I know Deepak Chopra, Dr. Chopra. He has that hanging in his private study. And it's been a very, very popular image, and it's right in half. It's exactly half the Taj Mahal and half reflection, and it's all high key because it was a very foggy morning. And some of you may have seen one of my books called Hymn to the Earth, and it's in that particular book. I believe it was even exhibited when I had my show, thanks to Jim Welu at the Worcester Art Museum back in 2011. I think that was there as well. So anyhow, it was cut in half. So since then, I talk about Rosenstock's rule of halves. So sorry to take so long to tell this story, but I try to squish it down a little bit. Okay, folks. One more, yes.
So how do you, here's how you structure your photo tours, even from the perspective of like these photographers from all different backgrounds, what do you want them to take away? What do you want those aha moments to be for them? What's your wish for the success of the tour?
That's a very, very deep and good question. We live if we could really think about our own particular essence and cut out, well, let me say it another way. I'll quote someone I'd never met, but I wish I did, Pablo Picasso, who said, "Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life." When we could really feel what that means, we could all be so much more appreciative of the world around us. And as artists, or just us, we're all artists. By appreciating more things and more people and etc., it could change the world. And we need change, and I think it's very important to just be as appreciative as possible and compassionate. And so the aha moment is, it's funny how that kind of happens. Like Ansel Adams used to say, if I got 10 good photographs a year, I consider it a good year. Now, what amateur today or what photographer today would go along with that? Things have kind of changed, but there's like something within us that kind of communes with something outside of us that's very important, and sometimes it just kind of clicks. Like Minor White used to say, like when the mirror of the man kind of mirrors, the subject out there, like something else kind of happens. There's some kind of mystery that we're all plugged into, and you kind of sense it. I was a judge here, but everyone really is their best and first judge. No one could tell you what's not good. You kind of get a feeling when you create art. Sometimes it just really speaks to you. It speaks to your soul. It speaks to your essence. You feel it. Hope that answers the question. Thank you. Okay, thanks, folks. Okay. I ran over there a little bit, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another longtime friend of the Small Stones Festival joining us next, Ellen Reihardt. Classically trained as a fine art artist, she has a unique gift of capturing beauty in a portrait, still life, and landscape painting. Her work has received many awards, including 2025 Jurors' Choice at Small Stones Festival here, 2023 Clarence and Helen Prince Award, Academic Artist Association 2022 Elliott Liston Memorial Award, Rockport Art Association and Museum, and 2020 Best in Show, Fine Arts, Small Stone Festival of the Arts. She is a member of several art associations, including Copley Society of Art, Rockport Art Association, and Museum and Academic Artists Association. Ellen's artistic career began with watercolors, but in recent years, she has gravitated to oils. In 2015, she co-founded the New England School of Fine Art, where she is the director and principal instructor. The school is dedicated to teaching and preserving the traditional methods of realistic drawing and painting. She enjoys teaching abroad in Italy and at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. So, welcome, Ellen Reihardt.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here, and thanks for that great introduction. So my name is Ellen Reihardt, and as you heard, I'm an artist, art educator, and I am the owner of the New England School of Fine Art located in Worcester. I was really honored to be one of 3 fine art jurors this year, and it was my privilege to work with both Janet and Jim. This is my second time being a juror for the Small Stones Art Festival, and I've had the pleasure during other shows as well. And it's really funny when during a show, because I always think that we are going to be full step and in agreement with all of our choices and what we like. And that is so far from the truth. And this year was no exception. Agreeing on first, second, and third place was so difficult. And it took us at least 3 hours. So no offense to the photographers, they were done. We were left here really closing the place at least 3 hours later on, still probably not arguing a little bit. But all of us are biased to some degree. We each have our own tastes and preferred styles. As a contemporary realist, I gravitate towards that type of work. In a work of art, I look for craftsmanship and skill. I consider composition, technical drawing, value contrast to create form, depth and distance, color and edges, both lost and found, and atmosphere. A work may impact us emotionally by reminding us of something nostalgic. Framing also plays a keynote in judging. Some frames enhance a work, while others detract from a piece. Sometimes the quality of work is so good that it may be just a little sparkle that makes one work stand out over another. This year, the quality of work was amazing, and I applaud all the artists. And like others were saying, if we had a basket of awards, we could have easily given them all out. And I think maybe that's something that they should consider for next year. With that, I'd like to focus on the first, second, and third place winners, why I feel they deserved an award, my juror's choice, and then a few other outstanding works. All right. And I'm just going to encourage everyone after everyone speaks to go and look at these works, because I do feel the in-person work is so much better than what we're seeing here on the screen. But here we have our first place winner by Dalen Wells, Apple Branches, which is an oil on panel. So several components draw me to this work, including an interesting composition, the value contrast, the color, and the lost and found edges. The apple's leaves and branches are cascading out of that dark recessed area. The leaves disappear into the background and the apples come forward. We can see slight touches of red in the foreground that catch the eye. In later reading the artist's statement, I was not surprised that Dalen is a Putney painter, and I can definitely see the late Richard Schmid's influence in this work. And I love Richard Schmid. He's one of my favorite artists. Okay. Our second place winner is Olivier by Ellen Gould, and this is oil on linen panel. Okay, so you can see the attitude, right? The attitude and expression of this young woman in this work catches the viewer's attention and I think makes this piece. Her chin is slightly lifted and she is looking down at the viewer in somewhat of a smirk. I feel that she's humoring me. Maybe she's mocking me. I don't know. But definitely she has one up on me. The work is technically sound. Her skin tone has a nice translucency, and the shadow shapes and values are good. The pattern of the upholstery is mimicked in the young woman's tattoos. And if it wasn't for the tattoos and the bare arms, this could have been a work from the past. Okay. Third place, For the Girls by Lissa Banks, and that's acrylic on canvas. Okay, if anyone has ever painted flowers, and I have painted a lot of flowers, and I'll tell you they are harder than a portrait. So for anyone who's ever painted flowers, they know just how difficult they are to capture. Petals numbers, the number of petals vary, the shapes vary, color varies as the sun bleaches the color from the outer areas, leaving the centers with more of an intense color. Technically, I think this painting is flawless. There is a beautiful composition as the flowers cascade and droop over to the right, and great attention was paid to the delicate and ruffled edges of the petals. Okay, this was my juror's choice, Girl with a Traditional Korean Dress by Young Farwell, and that is oil. For my juror's choice, I picked this. When I walked into the exhibit last week, I immediately saw this painting right in front of me, and it stood out. I love when a painting grabs my attention from a distance, and then of course I have to inspect it closely, right? So also passes close inspection. And this painting does both. We can see compositionally, we can imagine or see two abstract diagonal lines. So the sitter is kind of formed in a triangular shape. So the composition, I feel, for a portrait is good, and it's positioning the sitter as the main focal point. The eyes are captivating. The garment is full of color. Even though sometimes simplicity is nice, the costume is full of details, making this a challenge to paint. The slight variation of color and value in the background, you can see there, adds depth and atmosphere to the painting. And overall, it's a showstopper for me. Okay, this next painting, it is so sweet. This is Bathing in Blossoms by Carol Arnold, and it's oil on panel. So I just really love creating and surrounding myself with the beauty of nature. And I think that's why I just gravitated towards this piece. This painting, I think, is a little gem. It has a wonderful softness and play with hard and soft edges. There's a clear focal point, which is the bird on the bird bath. It has strong value contrast, and I love the relationship between the soft blue background and the pink flowers, what looks to be peonies. So it's a very lovely piece. The next work is a watercolor by Rhea McNamara. This painting, for me, is a wonderful example of atmospheric perspective. There's a great depth and value contrast. I started my career as a watercolorist, as Ken had mentioned, so I know how difficult watercolor can be. So I have a great appreciation for this artist's skill. I love the beautiful sky and the strong value contrast between the windmill and the background. And then, okay, and this painting is Celine by Simone Scholes, and this is oil. This is very soft and feminine painting. I find the colors to be very soothing and tranquil. I like the artist's choice of adding the silver leaf, the circle of silver leaf, and I feel like the composition or the piece would not work well without it. It helps to fill a void, and it adds depth and distance to the work. Additionally, it's reflected quality, which we can't really appreciate here, but it makes it very interesting. And just in a few final words, I want to applaud everybody who submitted work to the show. I feel we are the most vulnerable when we put our creative talents out there for others to judge. I have had work accepted in shows. I have won numerous awards, but I've also been rejected. And so I know what that can be like. I encourage everyone to be original. You don't have to be avant-garde, but be original with your own material. We are stepping into crazy times where AI is doing a lot of our thinking or aiding us in our creativity. But I really encourage you to please be true to yourself and to grow in your own creativity. And if you draw and paint what you love, success will find you. And any questions? Yeah? Okay. He made it easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker hardly needs an introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. Jim Welu has been, again, a friend of Small Stones Festival, as well as a friend of the entire Worcester arts community over the many, many years. He's Director Emeritus of the Worcester Art Museum, where he served as Chief Curator and Director. He began his career as an artist and taught studio art in college before pursuing further studies in art history. A specialist in 17th century Dutch and Flemish art, which we don't have much here on display today. He has published and lectured widely and organized a variety of exhibitions. I think that's an understatement. So, Jim?
Okay. Thank you, Ken, very much. Well, it's great to see you and some of the artists, and to have this opportunity to thank the artists for coming together and, as Joellen said, showing your work, whether you're going to win a prize or not. It's important to be seen because, you know, everyone does art. If you have children, and I have grandchildren, and two of them are over there, they're twins, they do art all the time. And remember when you were a kid, and sometimes you don't have time until you get later in life to do it. But it's so personal, and we all experience the world, and some are better at putting it on paper or canvas, some are better at putting it into music, etc. But it's individual, and you heard Janet and others talk about composition design. There's so many things to think about within that particular medium that you work in. And I had the pleasure of working with Janet and Sue Ellen, and we didn't fight. We came together. No, but I've juried alone across the country in different shows, but I've juried with other people. I love jurying with other people because you learn a lot. We all look at things differently. And how effective is the artist in getting across their message or their image that they want to convey? And there is things like good design, good composition, the way you handle the medium. So there are rules, but it's a huge world. And it's hard to get too specific about that. But I would say the challenge of this show is that you look at a lot of works of art, and having been an artist, very active, you want to be fair. You want to really give them a good shot at looking at it carefully, not just going through first just images online and then coming here and seeing the final ones that have been selected to give the prize winners. But the joy is seeing that there are so many active artists here in New England doing wonderful work. And thanks to Small Stones for bringing it all together here. So we can start with one of my first. You can see it right when you come in the door. And this one by Marcia Gleason is a reference to a famous California artist of the mid-century, a modernist, Diebenkorn, in his Santa Monica living room. It's taken from a photograph. You could see it online. I went to check it out, of course, being an art historian. And what I love about this, having been a painter, and I did a lot of watercolor and oil as well, I just love the spontaneity. And here, this is a really gutsy artist. You can just see the way she puts the paint down and let it go. I mean, don't fuss with it. You'll smooth it. It's like I always think of the watercolors artists, for example, like Homer and Sargent. It's these happy accidents that are so beautiful. And when you go out and do watercolor, this is not watercolor. This is oil on paper on panel. But the weather is changing constantly, and the humidity. You can't prepare for how that watercolor is going to dry. So a lot of it is happy accidents. The same thing here. You put it down once, you fuss with it, and you don't have that spontaneity anymore. And all of that adds up and really describes, really gives life to the actual work and the subject. There's just enough paint there to define the figure and the objects. If it got too detailed, in my opinion, it would get, I don't know, I would lose the expression. I would not get the character of this man in the chair. I mean, he's in a comfortable seat, but his legs crossed, and he's a man of action, and we know he was a man of action as a painter. It's, to me, the medium and the way it's handled is a perfect approach to get to know this California artist who also got so much joy from painting, just putting that paint down and seeing it. Do the next one now. And now here's a challenge because Joellen just talked about this, and she is a very accomplished portrait painter. What do I say next? Well, you know, having been a museum director and curator for many years, I always think about the whole history of art, and portraiture has been long-standing. And how did someone rise above all that and in our own time? Well, this was certainly a favorite of all three of ours. And what I love about portraiture, and I've taught classes on it at the Holy Cross and other colleges, and the history of portraiture, it's about us, you know, it's about people. And it's more than a likeness. It's the best portraits are character in me, the personality. It's not just physiognomy, the nose, the eyes, even though one of the classes I teach in the summertime is a class for parents and grandparents and children between 5 and 7. That's great. They just go to it. They don't care what you think. And they're really looking and they're capturing it so well. And this is particularly interesting to me because this is the daughter of the artist. I happened to see that, and that captured me because she knows well her daughter. I mean, this is her daughter. But at the same time, she doesn't know her daughter like her daughter knows her daughter. And her daughter's always moving, right? I remember teaching portraiture up at Holy Cross one day, and I had the students do a collage, just a half hour. It was a writing class, actually, where they would just rip up pictures out of magazines and do a collage that represented them in just maybe a half hour. And then the next half hour, they had to write about it. And I'll never forget, one kid said to me, he said, I should know the most about myself, right? And yet, I'm changing all the time. I can't define myself. And he said, this was the best part. He said, and you know, we put a label on people just like that, and they're deeper than that. And I remember he went on and said, the cleaning lady in the hallway, we call her the cleaning lady. She's more than that. And I thought, boy, if I didn't teach anything, I taught him something. But anyway, this is the daughter of an artist. And I thought, this daughter has a mind of her own, of course, probably thanks to her mother, who lets her do her things. And as Joellen said, you know, the tilt, the smile, tells the personality. Here's where a picture's worth 1,000 words. And where's this girl going? I was also fascinated by the background here. You've got a traditional, or someone said a vintage chair, and the carved back frame sort of almost is like a halo to her if she stands still. It suggests to me, and then you have not only the pattern of the chair, the carving, but the cushion. These are about traditional designs, right? We'd say. Then you have the tattoos of the upper arms. I love discovering them. I didn't see those when I was first looking at it online, and then seeing here, and I thought, these are all patterns, and they're generational. That to me is important. In a way, what I love about this portrait, it's where mother and daughter meet, right? Two different generations. It's a generational portrait. The daughter provides the subject, the mother provides the talent to capture it in this portrait. And well done. And then the next one is a still life. My field in Dutch art and in art history is Dutch and Flemish art, and this is when the still life really took off. In fact, the word still life comes from the Dutch, still leven, still standing dingens, they used to call it. And then they started calling it whatever the subject was, a bloemsje, tobacco piece, or whatever. I have a fondness for still lifes. As we know, they're from everyday life, and they're inanimate objects. You know, they might have been a bird that's dead, but in general, they're inanimate. In fact, some of our favorite still lifes we look at every day, and you know what they are? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Think about that. That's when you focus on a still life. And if you have a good chef in your house, that's great. Maybe it's the color, and you know, all those things that when you're a chef, which is certainly an art in itself. But I thought this was so well done. Now, this is, in a way, maybe not everyday life in New England, but lobsters are a favorite here. I come from Iowa, the Midwest. They're not my favorite meal, but I certainly respect them. And I think this artist has done such a great job. Here we focus on two It's two for dinner. Does that mean two people for dinner or dinner for two? Or you get both of them. If you're New Englander, I think you want both. You're not even going to share. But it's so well done. You can see how the abstract quality of it. Just think about oval shapes, the claws, the body of the claw, and then the oval shape of the plate. It all sort of, this real rhythmical, it works. And then have that black line running around the edge of the plate. What a great plate to pick. And then it's just red, and it's white, I would say, but as the Impressionists taught us, there's no such thing as white. There's no thing as black. There's many different colors in that tablecloth. But it really focuses on the simple and makes it such a memorable image. If you're interested in still lifes, I'll be giving a talk on sort of the history of still life painting for Flora and Winter at the Worcester Art Museum. I think it's the first day of March, which opens up, that's that day that we do the floral interpretations of the works of art at the Worcester Art Museum. And those are incredible still lifes, all the floral arrangements that go throughout the museum. My next one was this by Tori Cohn, A Good Summer Read. It's a beach scene, something you expect to find in a show here in New England. All the elements, the umbrella, the folding chair, chaise longue, the towels, the striped towels. Even if you look at the lower left there, there's a small sandcastle right there on the left. And then the vast ocean beyond. And yet, as a viewer, where does the artist want to take us? And they do it so well. We're drawn to what preoccupies this woman who escapes to another world with a good summer read, as the title says. You want to, now we got all that ocean, all that stuff. We'd love to be there right today, wouldn't we? And yet now we want to get into that book. What is she reading? It shows how we go from one world to another, and you got that whole world that you go all the way to the Cape, and then you escape into a book because it's your favorite read, another form of art. And then the last work, which I picked, as I said, we didn't fight, but we had to decide of one of our favorites, and this was one of many favorites, and it's right over there. It's a small work, and we saw many landscapes in a variety of media. This is, you can see, is gouache on paper. I chose this one because it's so simple, it's so colorful, it's so immediate, and it's so lush. Those things we think about nature. Again, to me, the color and the brushwork capture the beauty of nature, as she says, just before dusk. And look how this artist really knows how to take advantage of the strokes. You put them down and you let them go. You start fussing with that, it's not going to have that spontaneity anymore. But also, this artist really knows color and what we call valeur, the shades of those colors. Look at that road going down the middle, which just zooms you right down. I mean, it looks like it's a mile long. And obviously, the artist takes advantage of Renaissance perspective, lines converging, but it's controlling the value of that bluish gray that seems to go very, very, very far, and for miles. And clearly, this is a work of art that enables us to escape into the great outdoors. And that's why I love it so much, especially on a day like today when we're inside. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of the people who helped put this together. I really admire the volunteer group here. It's a great amount of work, having been in the museum world, but you do it so well, and it was a pleasure. I think I've juried about 3 times now or so, but always a joy. Thank you. I know we're going on long, but if there are any questions, and I'll be here afterwards, so, okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.